Hi, welcome back to the Frugal Life with Mercedes. Today I am going to show you guys how I make my own hand soap. Now this is a requested video and I figure with everything going on I would share my knowledge. I've been making my own hand soap for I want to say 4 or 5 years. So the story of that is basically, I didn't grow up using bar soap. My mom always bought liquid hand soap and liquid body wash. I have 7 brothers and sisters, so there was 8 of us sharing one bathroom. So my mom personally didn't like the idea of all of us sharing a bar of soap. So we all had our own loofahs or washcloths, and then we would use the soap that was in a dispenser. And that's just how my mom did it, and that's how I got used to it, and that's what I do now that I'm a grown-up. So, as you guys know, if you've been watching my channel a while, people give me stuff all the time. So, I was given a bunch of bars of soap, and I did donate some of them, and then some of them I did keep, and I made my own hand soap. Now, when I make my own hand soap, I use that hand soap also as body wash because I'm using like body bars. I've never had a problem. I always smell fine. My hands are always clean, all that kind of stuff. So it's dual purpose. Now, if you watched my money saving tips video, you'll see that I did have a bottle of body wash. I bought a bottle of body wash. And then I put my own homemade soap in it. So I do not make the bars of soap. I take bars of soap that I was given and I make them into liquid. It's really not that hard. There is some trial and error depending upon what size bars you use. I usually use Irish Springs 3.2 ounces. And I only use that because I have a ton of them, again, that were given to me. And you use some water. And I'm going to show you guys step by step how I do that. And I put them in pickle jars, but you don't have to. You can put them in plastic jars. You could clean out a milk jug and put them in there. There's many things that you can do. Just use what you have. And bars of soap, I personally don't think are more cost effective, especially because you're putting in the time to make it. So this project really is like if you are a couponer and you get a bunch of free bars of soap, or maybe you go to the food pantry and they give you a bunch of bars of soap, or a friend gives them to you. Or you somehow acquire them. Another thing is if you already use bars of soap and then there's those tiny little, there's all those scraps at the end, save those. What you're going to do with the little scraps, you're going to want to dry them out like on your counter, like on a paper towel. And when they're dry, then you can put them in a baggie or a jar, and then you could use those to make your homemade hand soap, because I've done that before too. If I go to a hotel, a couple of times a year, my husband and I will go on trips and we'll stay in hotels. And I don't leave the little bars of soap. I take them with me and let them dry out. And I have made hand soap out of the little scraps before. So remember, we're not letting anything go to waste. And I made soap, I want to say 8 months ago, a year ago, and I still have more because I made like I did 4 bars of soap, 4 or 5 bars of soap at one time, and I ended up with a couple of gallons of soap. So I did just do 1 bar today for this experiment, just to show, well, not experiment, for this video, just to show you guys, but you could totally do more than 1 bar of soap. My suggestion though, since if it's your first time, is do 1 bar of soap and then go from there. And again, I say this later on in the video, it depends how watery you like your soap. Like some people really like that foamy soap. I personally don't, but if you like a thicker soap, then you're going to want to use less water. If you like something more diluted, you're going to want to use less water and then add more water later. So it just is a personal preference. But the way that my soap turned out, I think is perfect. The other thing is too, before you transfer it into your soap container, you're going to want to give whatever container you have a good shake or a good stir, because it will become like jelly and solidify, especially the longer that it sits. So I'm about to show you guys a step-by-step on how I make hand soap. I hope you enjoy. This is the supplies that you need to make your liquid hand soap. I've got a measuring cup with 6 cups of water in it. I have just a basic bar of soap. I got this one for free, but any bar of soap would do. This one is 3.2 ounces. You could do up to 4 ounces, and this would still work for you. This is just what I'm using for this time. I have a cutting board and I have a cheese grater. You could also use a knife, or however you want to break down the soap to make it into small pieces. Now, what you want to do is you want to get a big metal pot, and you want to boil the 6 cups of water. Then after the water boils, then you put in the grated or cut up soap into the pot, and then you let it melt. Okay, here is the block of soap all grated up, as you can see, and I have the water in the pot, trying to heat it up to boil. I'm going to put the lid back on that so it'll boil a little faster. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a knife to cut up the grated soap even more, because the smaller the pieces, the faster and more efficiently that it dissolves into the water. Okay, so we're just going to cut this up into a little bit smaller pieces. Of course, it's hard to do with one hand. Now, this is also what I do when I make my homemade laundry detergent. I cut up and grate bars of soap to go with that as well. Okay, so that's good. And then we're going to wait for this to boil and we can add the soap. Okay, we got the water boiling, and I am going to transfer the soap into there and turn down the heat. So I poured the soap chips in and I turned the heat down to medium from high. And now I'm going to use my whisk. Now, you don't have to use a whisk. You could use a wooden spoon. You could use whatever it is that you like to use. I just like to use whisks. Now you're just going to stir this up, because you want to get all the soap pieces melted and broken down. Okay, now I'm going to grab a spoon and I'm going to see how the soap pieces are faring. And I actually think this is... There we go. See, look at that nice green color from the Irish Spring soap. And all the soap pieces are broken down. That's the benefit of cutting up really small. That didn't take long. Just going to give it another whisk. And now we're going to turn that off. Just give it another couple of good stirs just to make sure. Okay, next you add more water, but you want to add cold water. Okay, we're going to move this from the hot burner over to a cold burner. Okay, now we're going to add about 8 cups of cold water. Now, it doesn't have to be like super cold, ice cold, just from the tap. And as you can see, this is the burner that I cooked it on. And here it is cooling down on this other burner. And we're just going to pour this in. Be careful not to splash yourself or to make a mess like I do. Okay. I'm going to set that there. And then we are going to give this a good stir too, so we can blend the hot water with the cold water. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you are going to let this sit. You are going to let this sit on your stove or on your counter. Just be careful because it's hot right now. So you don't want to burn your counter. I like to do it with the lid because one time I did it without the lid and it was summertime and I had gnats in the soap, which was not lovely at all. So I'm just going to let this sit here. You want to let this sit overnight. 12 to 24 hours, because what's going to happen is it's going to solidify and it's going to become kind of jelly like a hand soap. So you're going to want this to sit. Now the thing is you might have to add more water after. So you're going to let this sit overnight. Then the next day when you go to check on it, it might be extremely jellied. That depends on if you use the 3.2 bar of soap or the 4 ounce bar of soap. If you don't use the exact amount of water, there's a bunch of different factors. So right now it's completely liquefied. As you can see, it's completely liquid. So it's going to gel, and then later on you might have to add more water, but we'll get into that later. I'm going to let this sit overnight, and I will be back with you guys tomorrow afternoon after this has sat out for the evening. This is the next day. As you guys can see, this is how it looks. When I went to sleep, it was still watery, but now it's like gel. So what you're going to want to do is give this a good stir. Now I have heard that some people use immersion blenders, but I actually don't have an immersion blender. So we're just going to give this a good stir. Now, at this point, if yours in the process, I've made soap before and it was like a solid sheet of like Jello. It looked like Jello and you could slap it like Jello. That means you did not add enough water. So at this point, you would add more water and get it stirred up. And really, it's just kind of trial and error depending upon what soap you use and how big the bar of soap is. Okay, we're going to keep giving this a good stir. And the other thing is too, when you transfer this to your container, you're going to have to give it a good stir later on as well. Here's some soap that I made a couple of months ago. And this is just a pickle jar that I keep it in. And as you can see, it's like Jello, but it's got chunks in it. So that's because this one I had to add more water to because I didn't add enough water to it originally. So all I do is give it a good shake. So usually I have 2 hands, but you're going to want to give it a good shake. And then I put it in my soap dispensers. I bought this at Walmart, I want to say maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago. As you can see, it's still in perfect condition. I think I paid $3 or $4 for it. It makes it really easy to transfer soaps and conditioners and different beauty products back into a bottle. It's also good for small things at home. I really like this one a lot, because this clamps down on the bottom and this clamps down on the top. And this helps transfer things into other things. I'm going to transfer the glass into this. This is another pickle jar. Again, I get these from my friend. My friend, my mother, my friend's mother, and myself, they get these they get these kind of pickles quite a bit, so then I always have people save them for me, and they are perfect. And the mason jar ones of these can be kind of pricey. The other thing that I'm going to use, which I've shown this in a lot of my videos, this is a funnel. People use this for canning, for home canning. I have 2 of them. You can get them in the canning section at your local Walmart, hardware store, different places like that. You can get them online, I'm sure. And this really helps eliminate spills when you're transferring things into other containers. I personally like to use glass. One, this was free. There is no glass recycling where I live. There used to be, but there's not anymore. That ended about a year ago. I personally just like glass better. And as I've said before, it's free. Why go and buy more mason jars when I can get this one for free? But don't go out and buy stuff. Especially right now with everything going on. Reuse what you have. I've put the soap in plastic before. It's not a big deal. If you have a plastic ice cream bucket, that would work perfect too. The only thing I would suggest is these 2 products I like to have. They're not a need, they're not a must. That's just what I like. It really makes my frugal soap making and mixing of products much easier. So I'm going to transfer the soap into here, and I will show you guys how that looks. Here's it all poured into the container, and actually I have more. So I'm just going to pour it in here and mix them together. Now this is actually a pretty good batch. Now if this is too watery for you, you will want to use less water in the original process. And again, like I said, it's not rocket science, but it does take some, experimenting, because only you know the consistency of the soap that you like. Some people really like that soap, the foam soap. I know my grandmother really likes that, and I don't really feel like that's soap, it's just foam, but that's a personal preference. So I'm going to go ahead and pour the rest of this in there, and as you can see, this is about halfway full, and then I'll just fill it back up to the top. All right, there we go. So look at that beautiful homemade hand soap, and this whole container and this much of this container, all from 1 bar of soap and some water. And even though you have to wait overnight, the process of making it is really less than 10 minutes. Okay guys, so that was my step-by-step on how to make hand soap out of bar soap. Again, it's really not that hard. The whole process takes less than 10 minutes if you're not counting the sitting overnight to gel. And anybody can do this, and this would be a great project to get your kids involved in. I know that when I lived with my brothers, I don't like grating soap, and I need grated soap for this and also for my homemade laundry detergent. So I would get my brother to help me grate soap, and then that way everybody is, participating, and you could get somebody to stir it, and depending upon people's ages and who's all living in the house, you can get other people involved. So I hope you guys will give this a try. And if you guys have any other requested videos, put it down below and I try to oblige. I am going to do a video on my homemade laundry detergent, but I'm not going to be able to do that until after the virus and everything, because I'm not going to the store except for essentials. And I actually still have a ton of laundry detergent. I made homemade laundry detergent about 2 years ago. I've lived in my apartment this month for 2 years, and I made it right before I moved in, and I'm still using the same laundry detergent. But keep in mind, it's just my husband and I. So if you guys are interested in the recipe for my laundry detergent, I can say the recipe in a future video, but I can't show you a step-by-step because I don't have the supplies until, things clear out. But if you have any other video requests, let me know. I also have an Instagram, The Frugal Life with Mercedes. And please consider subscribing. And thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, bye.